Wonderful to meet you, man. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your good work as a coach, I want to know 5 years ago we were just coming into this pandemic. We were a weekend trying to figure it out. How did you ultimately make it through that time period, and how has it influenced the way that you do work and live now?
I love that question because I oftentimes ponder what life was like pre-COVID. It seems like that's our world now. It's pre-COVID, post-COVID,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
COVID was rough on my community just simply because I was in the fitness business, still am in the fitness business. We had three schools in Houston, three Krav Maga schools in Houston. I had also invested in parkour school. Come to find out, physical fitness is the worst business to be in during the pandemic, where they shut everything down, which is very unfortunate because obviously we really needed people to be as healthy as possible, as physically healthy as possible during such an event. But it seemed like all of the recommendations went the opposite direction from staying healthy, unfortunately.
yeah.
What I felt the moment everything started shutting down was, how do I serve the community that I'm a part of? I had already been teaching breathing and meditation to the kids at Krav Maga Houston. I have a special program there called the Master Program. It's for kids that have a long-term mindset in regards to Krav Maga. They want to earn a junior black belt before they graduate high school, and it's a leadership program. We do all kinds of things in that class that we wouldn't be able to do in a normal class. Breathing and meditation is one of them. So I had been teaching those two topics to them for years, and when the pandemic started, my attitude was, well, how do I serve this community the best that we can? And so I decided to start teaching breathing and meditation online for free, just for that particular community.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 2020. And then I loved it so much, and I just decided to keep going. So here we are.
Okay. So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis right now. And to do
Mhm.
that, it's always good to put you in front of a bunch of kids at career day. They're sixth graders, they're curious, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Yeah, I'm a coach. I teach people how to protect themselves, teach them how to be more dangerous human beings. Quite honestly, that's the goal, so that they can protect themselves and their families and balance that with breathing and meditation to make sure that you're also a good person.
So, what did you want to be when you were in the sixth grade? What was your dream life?
I wanted to be a fighter pilot,
Okay.
and come to find out, I'm very colorblind.
Oh,
I
no.
don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what were the foundational elements early on for you to want to be a fighter pilot, to get into this realm of helping people be more effective with their faculties, mentally and physically?
Yeah, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I started to go down that path, went and saw a recruiter and all of that. Learned that I was colorblind, and so that kind of set me off on, well, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
My dad was an engineer, wanted me to be an engineer. That didn't resonate with me at all. I knew that I did not want to work for some big corporation. It just wasn't in my blood to do that. Um, but so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I did know that I wanted to be of service. I did know that I was interested in psychology. Unfortunately, I had a really young experience with suicide. My best friend, when I was 11, took his own life, and so that really made me kind of think about what in the world is going on with human beings, right? I knew some of his life story that led to that. I remember um, my mom and I went to pick up my brother. My best friend's brother and my brother were in the same preschool together, and I was 5 years older than my brother, so I was probably 9 at the time. And we go in to pick up my brother, and while we're there at the sign-in desk, uh, my friend's mother comes running through the front door of the preschool, screaming, "He's going to kill me!" Right? Talking about her husband. And so they put all the kids under the desks. I'm under the sign-in desk, and they locked the doors. They closed the doors and locked them, but he beats the doors in and attacks her in front of everybody. And so it wasn't long after that that my friend took his own life. That was an experience that I reflect on a lot, that I think really led me in the direction of helping other people, in particular young people. So, I went to college and knew that engineering wasn't going to be my thing. So I decided to get into psychology. That led to a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I got really lucky. I just happened to walk into class one day. There's a lady up in front of the room who was a guest. I walked in late, in the middle of her discussion, her presentation, and she was talking about a very rare opportunity. You usually don't get to work one-on-one with patients until you've got a master's degree or higher.
Yeah.
But this particular project, it was a research project at the University of Houston. And what they did was treat autism, kids on the autistic spectrum. And it was an intensive therapy program, therapy program that had been designed at UCLA.
Yep.
There were 16 replication sites set up around the world at different universities. And I just happened to be at one of those replication sites, University of Houston. So that's the project that the lady was talking about. And it was one of those things that, you do 12 months of 16 hours a week or however many hours it was. I don't really remember, like 12 to 16 hours of volunteer work. You get course credit for it, and then you get a letter of recommendation if you decide to go to graduate school. So I was like, I'll sign up for this. It's a great experience, working one-on-one with clients. And then I'll go on with my life after that. And that turned into an 18 and a half year career
Wow.
in behavior analysis, working with those kiddos. And then I was working for Krav Maga Houston, overlapped with that a little bit. So I'd work with at the clinic during the day, go train at night in Krav Maga. And the person who was responsible for the youth program left, and I was offered the opportunity to lead that program after she left. And so that started a second career that was completely separate from what I had been trained in. I was teaching groups of kids this time. I'd never worked with groups of kids. It was always one-to-one. And but they chose me because they knew my background. And I was like, hey, I don't know anything about teaching kids Krav Maga, but I'll give it my best shot. And so I've done that now for like 15 years. I no longer do behavior analysis, not in that formal sense of working in a clinic, but once you learn those skills, honestly, you use them every day of your life.
That's the thing that's interesting about this. My son is 20. He's on the spectrum. We used to do
Uh,
ABA therapy when he was younger. So probably in the 2009 to 12 range. So when you talked about that, I watched all of that unfold. And I've been in that world and watched how all of that kind of happens. So the fact that you transitioned into this new life, to me, knowing that special needs world, you can do anything. And when you get
yeah,
that mental fortitude and you've seen that unfold, that's
yep.
definitely something. And I really, when you were talking, I wish my son's name is Miles, that he could have been woven into somebody that was from the SPED community that could have taught him something in the martial arts realm that he would have
Yeah.
trusted, because you would have a level of sensibilities of understanding those
Mm,
behavioral trends that would have led him to not only curb behaviors, but to embrace others that would have
mm.
totally been in that realm.
Yeah, I wish that would happen more. I was lucky enough to have had that experience early on and for as long as I had it. And it just so happens that that clinic is directly across the highway from the Krav School. So my second in command at Krav Maga Houston in the youth program, I sent her over there to work for a year just to have that experience.
Yeah.
So there's two people now, two out of four, who are working in the youth program at Krav Maga Houston who have behavior analytic backgrounds, which I think is great. And it also means that we are able to handle these days. It's incredible the number of kids that we have coming into Krav Maga that are on the spectrum. So
Yeah.
it's becoming more and more important that people have some sort of background and understanding in that area. Right now, I can tell you that we have a class or two a week where there might be as much as 50% of the kids in the room are on the spectrum in some capacity. So it's definitely helpful to have that background, and it would be great if more people went that direction in some way.
In '04 when he was born, I remember the stats were like 1 in 4 to 500 were going to be on the spectrum. By the time he got to be like 8 or 9 years old, it went down to like 1 in 50. Like the numbers
Yeah,
continue to go higher and higher. And that's interesting. And it would be beneficial for all of society. And I've noticed that he's gotten older in this modern era. People pretty much sniff it out pretty quick. And
yeah,
so many people are kind. And a lot of people are accommodating. And he's 20 now. And they're like, where's your dad at? And I'm like, I'm back here. I always got an eye.
yeah,
Always. No matter where
yeah,
I'm at, he's either got a phone or I got an eye on him or I know exactly where he's at, And
yeah.
I mean that's
Uh,
that community needs that and but I think the awareness is just going to go up. It's like it just is.
I remember when I started in that line of work, it was 1999, and a couple of years into it, since I had the background that I had, I was teaching the new therapists who were coming in, and back then the prevalence was 3 to 5 in 10,000 in '99. And the latest numbers I hear is like 1 in 38. And I heard a terrifying number the other day, honestly, that said they're expecting by like 2050 or it to be 50%.
And for parents and for all of us that are in this community trying to figure out what's going on,
Yeah,
I mean, I almost see it being a no-brainer. We've introduced so many different levels of things into our foods and cell phones in our pockets, all of these
yeah.
things that are inherently going to mess with the genome. So, for instance, with Miles, the only thing with him that has made him have developmental delays and be on the spectrum is he has one extra long arm on his 15th chromosome. That's it.
Interesting.
And that has led to a whole, cavalcade of different things that have been a part of his
Oh,
world. But it's that one
um,
little extra piece of genetic material, you know,
yeah.
and and it can be that simple.
Yeah, I think you're right that well, I think for most kids, there's going to be multiple variables that kind of interplay to develop that type of issue. Um, I think it's rare that people actually know that there's, a extra strand on the chromosome that causes it. Most parents, I think, are really in the dark as to why is this happening to me. So I think for most people, it's going to be multiple factors
Yeah.
that result in that diagnosis ultimately. And I can't help but think that it's really this kind of toxic soup that we're in all day long. I'm a huge fan these days. If I ever had to leave everything that I'm doing currently and do a normal day job forever again, I would work for a company called Yuka. They have an app that I think is just absolutely incredible that tells you the when you scan a barcode the additives that are in the food that are not on the label.
Wow.
And you would be shocked to find out that many of the foods that you absolutely love, that you think are health foods, are poisoning you.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no doubt. Um, so let me ask you this. When when did you know you were supposed to be doing this? Coaching and helping people. Was there a moment? Was there a flash in someone's eye? When did you know what your destiny and your meaning? When did you know that?
I think it was obvious to me when I worked with that first client,
Yeah.
but it was already my intuition that that was the direction that I needed to go because honestly, I always took life pretty hard. I've had to work at being a happier person. I've always I would be easily if I gave myself a diagnosis years ago, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would be dysthymic, like kind of this low level depression all the time. Um, and you see that in people like I can't engage in delusion to make myself feel happier. I have to find ways to bring about authentic happiness. And so I found that primarily in serving other people. And so it was really working with that first client where I was like, all right, this is clearly what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why it became a career, an 18 and a half year career.
So, being in this line of work, and I know it pretty well, especially in kind of the behavioral special needs world, you have to keep your strength up. You have to keep yourself intact. Who's been that inspiration for you in your life and your career? Who's been that heroic force?
I've had so many along the way. Uh, well, I'll say that one of the most important, continues to be one of the most important, was my first mentor in that space of behavior analysis. Gerald Harris is his name, Dr. Gerald Harris. He was the person who oversaw that project. He was just one of the one of the calmest, wisest people I've ever met. And he could take, I was just in awe of him all the time about how he would be able to take two people who had a profound disagreement about something, would be able to bring them together. And by the time the meeting was over, everybody shaking hands, everything's cool. He always had that ability about him. And he would oftentimes frustrate me because I wanted him to be like on my side. I was a lot different then than I am now. Um, I would I back then I had this desire to win in conversation, and it caused a lot of problems for me. But he was always so patient with me, even when I didn't deserve the patience he was providing. He was always patient, and yeah, so I'm forever grateful for him, and I still visit him quite often. Although I haven't worked for him in 10 years, I still go see him as often as I can. So Dr. Gerald Harris is one of them, and he was the head of that organization. And now um, uh, Darren Levine is the head of Krav Maga Worldwide. And he's a very special human being, not just because he's the head of the organization, but he is truly someone to emulate in terms of his demeanor and the way he treats his students and the way you can tell that he's just begging people to do what he's asking just for their benefit. You know, he's rooting for you. He's really just an incredible coach. And so, yeah, those two are the first ones that come to mind.
It's interesting you mentioned that stat of like 50% happening at some point.
Yeah,
And I always talk to people that about the special needs community and how special these kids are. They're savants. Like my son Miles was hanging out with a friend early in life. They've lost contact, but she used to be able to tell you what day your birthday was on in the
yeah,
next successive years. A total savant thing.
yeah.
And I know with Miles, he could like when he was a kid, he used to be able to pick out the one yellow Lego and every other muted color in
Yeah,
there. Like he would just pick it out. And there's
yeah,
all of these things that I know they're in a special ed, they're in the special needs world, but they all have these very distinct abilities. I mean, they could be their own
yeah,
superhero troop if they wanted to. So my question to you is, what's been one of the special clients, one of the special kids that you've run into that blew your
yeah.
mind?
Yeah, this one is still really easy for me. Um, similar, he had calendar skills, just like the girl that you mentioned, still does. And I remember this kid for two reasons. One, he was the most difficult child to work with when we started. But I got the reputation of work in the clinic of working with the most difficult kids because I loved working with them because there was always this opportunity to see drastic change.
Sure.
That's what I didn't watching for incremental change and celebrating incremental change. That's great to do. I can do that also, but I really love to see the drastic, dramatic difference in a kid in 2 years, that type of thing. So this kiddo wouldn't sit in a chair. He would fight you, uh, just if you simply asked him to sit in a chair for any given time. So when I started working with that family, that's what we started on, just basic compliance, being able to sit and learn that type of thing, right? And it was a battle, physical battle. Um, Over the course of time, he became this really incredible being, has his own business. He's got a shaved ice company, which is awesome. His face is actually on an ice cream. There's an ice cream company right now that makes ice cream and then puts special needs kids' faces on the ice cream. He's on one of those ice creams, super cool.
I think I know what you're talking about. They're going to
Yeah,
open one up here.
yeah, it's an awesome company
Oh yeah.
that they're doing that.
God.
so they're featuring him on one of those, which is cool.
Okay.
But what is one of the things that is most interesting about him and that I cherish the most is even till this day, I haven't worked with him for going on probably 20 years. And till this day, I get phone calls from him on my birthday because he remembers everybody's birthdays. And so I always look forward to that phone call. It's pretty cool.
Is it called Howdy Homemade?
Yeah.
Man, we just did it. We just did a thing. They came in and we saw them. We saw the owner. We saw who you were talking about. I can't remember his name. He had Downs and he was
Mhm.
really like kind of rambunctious and he was just like the non sequiturs were awesome. The room was laughing. It was so much fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, so Miles actually, I made him some business cards and he was giving
Cool.
them out and kind of getting his name out there.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, it's amazing, uh, I know as a parent, I wake up every day, and one of my cornerstone mantras is to be more patient. No matter how
Yeah.
patient I am, I want to be more patient. What do you do as a coach? What do you do being in front of that community? Is there something that you try to work on every day?
Yeah. The same thing you just mentioned, but it really requires a certain level of intentionality, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're working with special needs kids or typically developing kids. It's all the same. Working with any population, there's going to be days where you walk into class, there's 30 kids in class, and you just aren't mentally in the space that you need to be in to be
Yep.
able to walk into that room and be your best self.
Mhm.
So I oftentimes use mantras, and the mantra may change from one day to the next, depending on really what I need to tap into myself. And I was just talking to a client about this a couple days ago. With he's really on this path right now of trying to be the best human he could be on a daily basis. He's got a certain set of things that he's working on right now that are long-term goals and we just did a mantra meditation, which I love to do. So we just did a mantra meditation of, well, how do you want to show up? What does that look like? And how do you put that in a sentence? May I blank, right? May I be more patient for the next hour, whatever it might be, right? So I do that quite often. And what I find is that what that does is it takes me really outside of myself and really gets me thinking more about the other person, the other people, the students in this case that we're talking about. And anytime I get away from myself and worried about how I'm going to be and what's going on with me, woe is me, and start thinking about other people, there's a turnaround in my physiology and my mentality. And it's interesting because I actually remember first time I did this, and I was responsible for doing the news spots with Krav Maga Houston. So if something happened in the community, Channel 39 would call and say, "Hey, we need somebody to talk about this attack that happened on a female, for example." And do you have somebody that can do that? And that was always me. And it terrified me, still terrifies me. It just doesn't happen as often these days. Um, but it was terrifying, right? You don't know how many people are watching, and it's live oftentimes, and you never know what you're going to get from the interviewer. Like never, they'll send you like these are the questions that we're going to ask. They never ask those questions. It's something else. So there's so much to learn about being in that context of just adapting and overcoming in the moment, right? But for whatever reason, this particular day, they called and they said, "We'll be there in 15 minutes." And my nerves just shot through the roof, right? And I realized I had just had this moment of realization that everything that is going on in my head right now is about me. Woe is me. This is scary for me. How am I going to look, right? What if I make a mistake? And I just said, stop. This is all internal. Just stop. Sit down. I sat down on the wall, waiting for this interviewer to arrive. And I just shifted everything. May I be of service to the people who may be listening or watching this news spot.
Yeah.
And I just felt an immediate shift in
Yeah.
my body. And so that's become a habit of mine since then because it makes me more skillful. it also makes the nerves go away, or at least reduces them, because I'm no longer worried about how I'm going to look. Instead, I'm more concerned about how can I be of service to who. I mean, they called me for a reason. They called us for a reason, right? They obviously think that we have something that we could provide them. And so I always make that shift now. How do I be of service to the person that I'm talking to the people who might be listening? And that completely shifts my attitude.
You know, in the genius, brilliant realm of Joseph Campbell and his world of mythology and all of that, he talks about those characteristics of sacrifice that go in to the classic hero or heroine in a story. And a part of that is sacrificing yourself and giving yourself up and kind of that altruistic notion of looking into something else versus yourself. And it's interesting how that happens. Um, yeah, and I think about that being a parent on with in that spectrum world, like how many things I almost feel like sometimes I'm just like an alien on another planet. Like I'm walking around and all these sitcoms and all these people and all these things are just on a totally different realm. I
Yeah.
just I can't relate. Like we were watching a show the other night, The Middle, and
Mm.
it was the finale. And my wife hates finales, but she finally ingested it. Like, I'm like, let's go. I'm ready to go to the next thing. Let's finish the book. Let's finish the movie. Let's move on. She's like, I'm not quite ready, but it was just talking about how all the kids were moving on. And I think about special needs parents and where
Yeah.
I'm at. They're going to likely be with you for the rest of their lives, and
Yeah.
you don't live in this regular world. And I think those kids feel like that sometimes too. But the beauty of those kids too is they don't get hung up on all the regular things that we do. You know,
Sure. Yeah, it's so interesting. You talking about that brought up for me one of the most impactful conversations I ever had with a parent. And I don't know how we got on this conversation, but her child was very early in ABA, and we started talking about the holidays and Christmas in particular. And her child was still in a place where didn't appreciate gifts, didn't appreciate the holidays, didn't really want to be around everybody. And she told me that I think it had been 5 years at this point that they had been hoarding the Christmas gifts and birthday gifts in a closet for him, in hopes that one day he would have the awareness and the appreciation of those gifts. And on that day, they would open that closet and let him open those gifts. That was so impactful. It's just like, wow, that's a different world
yeah,
that family's living in from
yeah,
what I'm living in, right?
yeah, yeah, totally. So let me ask you this. You got to deal with a lot of serious stuff being a coach, and you've dealt with serious stuff throughout the years. If you were to walk into a room with everybody that's been a client or that's known you in a business sense, and you go up to a podium and you get to tell them one fun fact, one fun thing, one fun story about you that would humanize you, what would you tell that room?
That I love uh, a lot of the things that they love. I love my pets. I have three dogs. I have chickens in the backyard. I have four chickens in the backyard. Uh, that I'm just like they are in that regard. Um, I love being loved. We're so there's so many ways that we are the same, and very few ways that we're different.
Yep.
We tend to magnify and expand on our differences when there's just so many similarities. And I wish we would focus more there
Yeah,
than always causing rifts with our differences, right?
totally agree. Of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
I'm proudest of the work that I put in to try to be a better human being on a daily basis.
Yeah,
It truly is for me. It's my main goal these days. When I turned 40, honestly, I'm 48 now,
yeah,
and when I turned 40, it was one of those real. It was a pivotal moment for me because there was an immediate cognitive shift that I didn't anticipate. I didn't know that I thought 40 was halfway, right,
I
for
get
me,
it.
but I guess it is because, or at least that was my thinking. It was a subconscious way of thinking. And when I hit that day, I started thinking about the future in a way that I had never thought about it. And so I reflected on the previous 40 years and decided, there's a whole list of things that I want to be better at in the second half of my life. And so that's the work that I'm putting in these days. What do I do on a daily basis to try to be a better human being and be of service to everybody that I come in contact with? And so one of my mantras is be a blessing rather than a curse.
Yeah.
And you can do that with literally everybody. What type of interaction are you having with the guy, for example, behind the counter at the gas station,
Yeah.
right? It sometimes it doesn't require a whole lot of effort. It's just be be more friendly. Super simple. Smile. You don't have to say anything. Just smile. It's amazing just how impactful a smile could be on another person. But it also means be really aware of how your interaction with one person that maybe got you emotionally reactive can immediately affect your next interaction.
Yeah.
There's this really incredible study where they put a rat in a cage, and they had that cage wired up so that they could shock the rat's feet anytime they wanted. And what they would do is shock the rat, and then a few seconds later put a second rat in the cage. What would happen is the first rat would immediately attack the second rat. And I see human beings doing that all day long in
Mm-hmm.
their interactions with each other. You're frustrated about traffic, and somehow that changes your mood in a way that it colors your interaction with the next person that you
Yeah.
interface with,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, much of much of our disagreements is just that.
Yeah.
It's you've already been shocked by something else in life. It could be the most ridiculous thing, and for whatever reason, now it's coloring your interaction with a complete stranger, and worse, it's coloring your interaction potentially with the people that you claim to love most,
Yep.
right? So we go home and we say and do things to our family members, the people that we love most, that we would never say or do with a stranger.
Yeah.
And that to me is a travesty. And I just refuse to be that person. So my goal every day is to be the same person you see right now. I'm that same person to everybody else in my life.
Yeah.
And I try not to be that rat in the cage that is getting shocked. And instead, it's a clean slate. Every time I talk to somebody, do the best that I can. I fail all the time, but I fail less often
Yeah.
with that intentionality. So that was a very long answer
No,
to.
that's great. And you answered a second question I had. So I want to ask you, if anyone wants to reach out, hire you, ask questions, learn more, any of the good business, where do they go?
Nervousapes.com
Okay.
is probably the easiest, but you can also find me on social media. Trey Krav Houston is my name on Facebook. You can also find Nervous Apes on Facebook and Instagram.
Trey, what a great conversation, man. It was so good unexpectedly to be able to kind of delve into this world that
Yeah.
I've lived intimately. It's most of my existence and my thought process. So sometimes you get into a vacuum of feeling like you're all alone. So it's good to,
For sure.
cohabitate for a little bit. But I appreciate your story, appreciate your time, and keep doing the wonderful work, man.
Absolutely. And all the best to your family and Miles.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.